Hey, everybody, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. Well, it's a snowy Friday morning here in Massachusetts. This is what I get for taunting Chris Newmarker last week when we had our 60-degree temperature day. Winter is back with a vengeance, but Device Talks Weekly is back as well. So we have a great discussion for you today. I interviewed Heather Hudnut Page. She is Vice President and General Manager of peripheral vascular at Philips. We're going to talk about how Philips is approaching its building of an image-guided therapeutic business. It's had some significant acquisitions, including Vesper of late. We'll talk about all of that. And we'll find out a bit about Heather's background and her interesting path into medtech. Also very happy to have Chris Landon from Philips back. He is Senior Vice President and Business Leader of Image-Guided Therapy Devices at the company. Chris was on the podcast a couple of years ago, and he joins us for this week's Newmarker's Newsmakers. So great to have Chris Landon in the booth. Before we begin, I want to remind you that we're hosting our Device Talks Boston meeting May 10th and 11th at the Boston Convention Center. It's going to be a great day filled with professional development and networking opportunities. We'll be updating the agenda on our website very soon, but it definitely will be worth your time. So go to devicetalks.com to register, and please remember to use the code DTW, that's for Device Talks Weekly, DTW25, and you'll save 25% off the cost of registration, including our early bird registration rate, which is still ongoing. So save yourself a bundle of dough and use DTW25. Also, registration is open for Device Talks Minnesota. That's happening June 6th and 7th at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Minneapolis. Once again, you can use that same code DTW25 to save 25% off that registration fee. We'd love to see you at one of those meetings. We'd love to see you at both of those meetings, but I don't want to get greedy. It'd be great to have you there. We will have exciting keynotes at both, exciting professional development and networking opportunities at both. So please do keep an eye on the agenda and plan to attend one or both of those events. All right, let's begin this week's Device Talks Weekly Podcast. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Well, Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Good to be here, Tom.
Good to have you here.
How's it going, man?
It's going great, and I'm thrilled to have another Chris in the booth. We have Chris Landon, the Senior Vice President and Business Leader of Image-Guided Therapy Devices, on the podcast. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite, guys. And please, since there's going to be two Chris's here, please don't call me Little Chris. I can't handle that.
What would you like? Do you have a nickname that we can put out for the thousands of people listening to this podcast? Any type of term of endearment you'd like us to use?
Well, in multiple Chris situations, my friends just call me Landon.
Here you go.
We'll figure it out. So
it's Newmarker and Landon today. That's what
that's
we
right.
All right. I'll make it easy.
We need to come up with an alliteration, just like Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Actually, that sounds like a brand of soap or something. Newmarker and Landon, I didn't just want to spend $2 on Dove, so I went and bought some Newmarker and Landon.
I think it sounds like a fine steakhouse.
That's good. I can work steakhouse
for sure.
Nice.
So I listened to the interview we did way back, and Chris, I've told you this when we got together, that you were one of the first episodes that we had that really kind of took off. It was like, holy crap, this guy knows people. And it really got a lot of interest on LinkedIn and a lot of plays. So thank you for that. Very kind of you to share your network with us. But
my pleasure. And by the way, the podcast has absolutely taken off. It's got its own following. I've now become a big fan. In fact, I just want you to know, I brought my Device Talks survival kit with me to this interview. So I have my hot tub chicken wings. I've got my pumpkin sausage skewers. And just in case I need it, I've got my Klingon to English dictionary.
Wow.
awesome.
So I'm guessing if we gave you the same quiz that we gave Paul Grandin the first time, you would have gone 3 for 3 with the questions.
I probably would have done all right.
It's awesome.
You were the first guest that I asked how you found your way into medtech. I was surprised because I used to do it on a previous podcast I did. So your origin story was definitely interesting. I remember if you could just recount for us, like, how did you get into the industry? There was a video that sort of kind of caught your eye and really demonstrated to you the potential for medtech.
Yeah, it was a great story. I was being recruited out of my MBA program. I was fortunate enough to meet CEO of Medtronic, Bill George, while I was doing my MBA. And he introduced me to a few people at Medtronic. And while I was being recruited, I was shown a video. And it was a video of a patient who had been implanted with a deep brain stimulation device. And it turned out this elderly gentleman had in his career been a pianist and played at concert halls all around the world. And I just remember watching that video and that gentleman trying to play the piano while he was having his tremors and not being able to make any music at all. And once he turned on his device and those tremors kind of faded away, he was able to sit down and play a beautiful piece of music for a couple of minutes. And afterwards, the interviewer asked him how he felt about that. And all he wanted to do was express how thankful he was to be able to share his gift. And I felt like that was the spirit of what I was looking for in terms of fulfillment in my career, the ability to do something, not just to have a great career trajectory and a great opportunity to develop myself, but to give something like that to our customers, to our patients. I just thought that was very motivational. And that's how I got into medical devices. That was my motivation. That's
great. That's a fantastic start. And I mean, we make a lot of that here in the podcast. We're talking about what drives us in medtech. But how are we overstating sort of the mission that a lot of people feel in this industry? I'm sure it's not 100%, but person to person that you talk to, I mean, is there a broader? Do people share your sentiments?
Oh, I think so. In fact, funny enough, I was just having a conversation with someone this morning about the motivations of people that go into medical devices. And it's really not hard. You step foot into any one of these great companies that are building these great technologies, and you'll find people whose lives have been touched by either the technologies that their companies have made or technologies that other companies have produced. And I think that's what makes this industry so great is we all have a connection and a reason for being that goes beyond whatever the stock price is or whatever our compensation is. And it's almost universal. In fact, I just think it's something that just makes this even more special of an industry to be in.
I mean, that's kind of that's one of the like really exciting things about this industry is that at its best. I mean, to think about the lives that we can improve and just how, I mean, I guess unfortunately there's so much room for improvement in healthcare, but it's also like a fortune that we can, do work to really, really improve this and, make people's just improve the quality and length of people's lives.
I agree. And there is tons of room for improvement, but there's a great roadmap of future innovations coming our way that I think are going to just amplify the impact that medical devices and medical technology can have on patients. If you look at the history of medical devices, so many of the interventions that we as an industry have produced devices and solutions for have been acute. But as we move towards greater care and focusing on those chronic diseases that span years or decades for some patients, bringing technology to bear that combines not just mechanical benefits, but also layers in kind of the smart technologies and brings in the best in terms of things like artificial intelligence and robotics, so many things that so many innovators that you all interview are working on. These are the types of technologies that, when paired with our ability to conduct clinical trials and analyze massive amounts of data, they're going to lead us to breakthroughs in helping to manage these patients chronically. And that's an exciting future. There's so many big economic challenges associated with caring for patients, whether it's things like diabetes or heart failure or cancer, that we can envision how to combine intelligence with devices to bring procedural innovation to bear and chronic disease management innovation to bear on those patients. It's an exciting future. There's so much more runway ahead of us.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to hear from Heather Hudnut Page. She works with you there at Philips. She's Vice President and General Manager of Peripheral Vascular. And we'll talk more about what Philips is up to with Heather about your Vesper acquisition. I know we have a limited amount of time today. So, Chris, I think we better, Newmarker.
Yes.
I think we better start off with the Newmarkers Newsmakers. Once you lead us. lead us into number 5.
Let's do the Newsmakers, Newsmakers. So number 5 on the list, we have Baxter settling this week with the Securities and Exchange Commission for $18 million, to settling, accusations of misstated company earnings over, foreign exchange trading practices. This was, kind of a big problem, internally at Baxter in recent years, but without admitting or denying the accusations for the SEC, the Baxter's paying $18 million to settle things, move on. They also settled a federal shareholder lawsuit over the matter last year for $16 million. So hopefully just Baxter, turning a page over some of those accounting problems that they had.
And Landon, I'm guessing you don't want to say anything about the SEC, right?
Gonna stay away from that. He's backing away from the camera.
I'm backing away, and I'm going to be comfortable with that awkward silence.
Totally
moving along. What is number 4 on the Newmarker Newsmakers?
Well, this is more cheery news. We got FDA approved the next generation version of Medtronic's InterStim system. It's the InterStim X. This is implantable neuromod to treat overactive bladder or chronic fecal incontinence, non-obstructive urinary retention. But one of the really cool things about this new neuromod device is that's got a next generation of battery chemistry that's can offer more than 10 years of battery life without recharging. So just neat that you can get like this these are like all kinds of things that we used to turn to pharmaceuticals to treat, and now we can have like this neuromod device that can treat overactive bladder. We can put it in somebody, and this can last at least 10 years, and they're even saying in the low power mode this could last for 15 years potentially.
Yeah, that's great. It's great technology. I'm familiar with that, having spent some time at Medtronic. And again, it just speaks to the innovation that happens in our world of medical devices. This idea that sometimes we take big swings at the plate and we come up with brand new interventions that change everything. And sometimes we spend and focus our time on the platforms we have, and we try to make them a better patient experience. At Philips, we talk about this all the time: user experience, patient experience. Those are 2 of the 4 legs of what we call our quadruple aim. And that guides us in terms of how we try to prioritize our innovation. But there's always this balance about trying to build off existing platforms, moving forward, improving patient experiences, physician experiences, while at the same time taking those big swings at the plate that change economics or maybe even clinical outcomes for patients.
Exactly. It's kind of it's kind of neat that we're seeing this trend in recent years of a host of companies taking this pacemaker technology. I mean, you had the pacemaker technology, you knew how to implant something with a battery into somebody that ran leads to things, and this realization we could do this more than just for the heart. We could run this to various nerves in the body and whatnot, and provide this neuromod therapy. So it's a really, really cool trend right now. And as you said, it's kind of like a technology we already had, so they know what they're doing. We're just applying it to new areas, which is really exciting.
Definitely. That's a great point. All right. Well, let us roll onto number 3. We only have our one interview of the day, so we'll hit the Newmarkers Newsmakers 5 to 1, and then we'll go into talking with Heather Hudnut Page.
Well, this is a story from late last week, but we had Shockwave Medical reporting they nearly quadrupled their sales in the fourth quarter, but they've got some really interesting technology that's involves delivering sonic pressure to treat a cardiovascular disease. So just kind of like a cool technology, and it's just really growing.
Oh, it's a very interesting space. And there was a talk earlier in the year about a potential penumbra takeover of Shockwave, and I haven't really heard anything about that since. So, and I'm guessing Chris Landon is not going to talk about that, which is perfectly fine. So good for Shockwave. We'll have their CEO on the podcast in a couple of weeks. So we'll let Shockwave speak to that directly. Chris, though, you can talk about Chris Landon. I know you need to catch a flight or head to the airport soon. I'm just curious, are you back to normal travel-wise, life-wise, COVID-wise? When I spoke with you last, you were in your basement or in your office, I should say. It wasn't your basement. You were in your office. I don't know where it was in your house, but are you back at the office? What's the return been like for Philips and for you?
Yeah, I imagine COVID is a frequent topic on your podcast, at least the ones I've listened to for sure. The world seems to be coming back a little bit. And what I'm encouraged by is the enhanced safety protocols that I know we've implemented in our company and that have been implemented in a lot of our peer companies. Believe it or not, there's a lot of benchmarking against one another, and we're all trying to do the right thing for our employees. Along with that comes reasonable business travel. So I am definitely going back and forth. The medical devices business at Philips has primary operations in San Diego, Colorado Springs, and Minneapolis. I go through in between each of the three sites pretty frequently. And of course, we're a Dutch company, so our headquarters are in Amsterdam. I am actually going to be making my first trip back to Europe in March, so just a few weeks away. And it'll actually be exactly 2 years to the day when I arrived that I left Amsterdam for the last time. So it's going to be a bit of a reunion for me to see a bunch of colleagues, and I'm really looking forward to that. We're also looking forward to resuming our travel to the Asia Pacific region as well. So we're kind of eyeing some dates in Japan and keeping an eye on China and finding out, just like everyone else, when it's going to be possible to go back there and go visit some of our customers and some of our operations in that great market. So keeping our fingers crossed that we can sustain this good trend and that we'll be able to get back on the road as normal relatively soon.
Oh, that's good to hear. And of course, we're hopeful that our Device Talks meetings in Boston and Minnesota go off as planned. Can never guarantee anything 100%, but definitely feeling better on our side as well.
I think it's moved on from a question of when are we going to beat COVID to when is COVID going to stop beating us. But I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that it's finally done. Maybe COVID can take a nap, read a good book or something, and let us get on and get back to life.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, I actually had COVID back in January, and I got sick, but not terribly sick. Then I had a cold a couple of weeks later, and that knocked me out. That thing lingered forever. Oh, that was awful. I actually had to go to urgent care for that because I was having trouble breathing, but I was able to get that under control. So maybe we all have to learn how to handle a cold again.
Maybe so. I'm keeping my face mask on in the supermarket. That's all I know. I don't want to get the flu. I don't want to get a cold. I won't be ridiculous about it. I'm going to go out and have dinner. I actually got to go out with my sons yesterday, and that was a good time. It was nice little piece of normal.
I unfortunately have preschoolers in the house, so I don't have that option. They're just going to bring it all home.
You've got no hope.
Yeah, I have no hope. I'm doomed.
No hope. All right, Chris. Newmarker. Let's hit number 2 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Well, number 2 on the list, we've got Smith and Nephew announcing they're going to be bringing on a new CEO, Dr. Deepak Nath. Their present CEO, Roland Diggleman, is going to be, stepping down. They say it was something they did as a result of a mutual agreement. He's going to be leaving at the end of March, and they're going to be bringing on Nath, who was, previously at Siemens Health and Ears, running their diagnostics business. So this really giant British medtech company that plays a big role in the ortho space. They're tapping a top executive from Siemens Health and Ears to come over and run the company.
Yeah, I wish them all the best. I have a couple of my former Medtronic colleagues, including a former mentor of mine, Brad Cannon, who are over there at Smith and Nephew. So wishing them the best.
How challenging has it been being a transatlantic company during this time?
Yeah,
it's difficult, especially when you're part of a big global company that has a singular operating model and depends a lot on collaboration and coordination in order to move all the businesses forward. It took us a while to master the technology that helps us stay connected using these kind of video types of meetings, these virtual types of techniques. But I'm not gonna lie, it's been pretty difficult to keep it going. And I'm thankful that there are so many people who've been willing to lean in and prioritize our employee mental well-being above all other things, because I think that's allowed us to kind of keep it true north. The other thing I'd point out is that our customers, our physicians, have struggled through this as well, and the challenges that they've had to get through. Not just getting access to support, because just like every other medical device company, our sales reps and our clinical specialists are usually in cases with doctors, but also just getting access to product. We've had in our own business disruptions related to supply chain, those kinds of things. I know many of our competitors and peer companies have had the same challenges, and that all has a cumulative effect on our customers. So those have all been challenges, and I know we're all kind of waiting for better days ahead.
And I think supply chain is the new COVID in terms of things we talk about that we would have never talked about before. I had an interview just this week where I was with Spencer Stiles at Stryker, And he actually felt that things may start to ease up, at least for Stryker this summer, this fall. How are you feeling about things this year? Do you think we'll see things get a bit better?
Yeah, for us on the disposable and implantable device side, I am optimistic. I feel like we're getting our arms around some of those challenges. Of course, we have a lot of chip-based, circuit board-based types of technologies, imaging systems, and that world's a lot more complicated, and the competition for supply is much greater. And so we're going to keep wrestling with those. This is one of the benefits of being part of a big organization like Philips, is that you can accumulate all of the needs across all of your businesses and bring that leverage to bear with your suppliers, and hopefully unlock some blockages through that. But keeping our fingers crossed. I mean, it's still kind of uncertain out there.
I know the device industry groups have been kind of pushing the Biden administration to kind of, prioritize medtech more, and like some of all these supply chain, moves they're making. I mean, how hopeful are you about that?
I don't have a lot of specifics I can share with you. I do know our own CEO, Frans van Houten, has met with different governments around the world to try to unlock some of this and prioritize medical devices and healthcare in terms of getting access to scarce resources. And I think that's something that, most of us in the industry can agree on is probably beneficial for patients and for markets.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Chris Newmarker, let's wrap up the this week's Newsmakers. What's number one?
Well, number one on the list, this is just actually been getting a lot of attention on social media as well. But we've got FDA approving an expanded indication for Abbott's cardio MEMS device. And this is like an implantable heart failure sensor, remotely monitors pulmonary artery pressure changes, to provide an early warning for worsening heart failure. But this expansion of the indication for FDA could make this available to another 1.2 million people in this country, in the United States, with heart failure. So really interesting device, and it's going to be available to a lot more people in the United States who could is definitely scary to have heart failure, and to have like this kind of device that they could implant, they could give you an early warning that things are getting worse. Would be it sounds good.
Well, Chris, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. In the future for medical devices, increasingly going into chronic disease. It goes without saying what a huge burden heart failure is, both in the U.S. and most other developed countries around the world. It is an enormous disease. It's extremely costly. It's very difficult to drive great outcomes just through pharmaceuticals alone. And so that you can bring smart devices to bear that produce data that help in the overall management of that patient. I mean, that's a great vision for the future. And I'm glad that Abbott was able to get their indications expanded. And I would also note this: it is not trivial to win those kinds of expansions, and the amount of time and investment that goes into producing data, working with your clinical researchers, and getting that out there into regulatory submissions. That's a massive amount of work, and it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of planning to get there. We've had CardioMEMS technology on the market.
The initial approval was in 2014.
And this is how long it takes to get those things done. So that's great news.
We had a great discussion about MEMS technology on this week's Device Talks Tuesdays. It was brought to you by Millar, and they have some interesting tech and new sensors coming online. So folks who want to see that can go to devicetalks.com and watch that on demand.
It's very cool that a technology that was originally used in jet engines is now being used in medical devices. It's just very cool.
Absolutely. All right. Well, great list, Chris Newmarker. And now let's roll into our interview with Heather Hudnut Page, Vice President and General Manager of Peripheral Vascular at Philips. Well, Heather Hudnut Page, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tom.
Great to have you here. Great to focus on Philips. So we'll talk again with Chris Landon, a different part of the show. And I actually listened to his podcast he was on. We had him on a couple of years ago. So this is a great opportunity to kind of catch up on where Philips has been, especially since your recent acquisition of Vesper. But before we get into all of that cool stuff, I'd love to find out about how our guests find their way into their industry. So what was your path in the industry? Are you one of those always wanted to be in healthcare people, or happened to find my way here and love it so much and never left people?
I would say I more always wanted to be in healthcare. My undergraduate degree was in economics, but my undergraduate thesis was on product line management in hospitals. And I really wanted to put together my interest in business with my interest in healthcare. So my first job actually out of undergrad was actually at General Mills, where I was the marketing manager for brownies and muffins. Very exciting job. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Oh, I happen to love brownies and muffins.
Well, they're good. They're really good. It was a great job. Actually, quality control is tasting your own product. So my job was much better than the tuna helper job, but very fun.
That's a tough job.
Yeah, but I really loved marketing. And so I went back after working at General Mills and went to Kellogg to get my MBA and focused on healthcare. Mm-hmm. And out of Kellogg, got my first job really in the medtech space, which was at Medtronic. It was actually the second year that Medtronic was hiring people with MBAs, came in kind of at the ground level within the MBA format at Medtronic and ended up spending 24 years there.
So just going back on that decision to go to Kellogg, did you know while you were selling brownies and muffins that this was not right for you and you definitely wanted to find a way to healthcare? What sort of led you to sort of make that course correction? I always love to learn about those moments.
Yeah, no, I really wanted to connect my interest in healthcare with my interest in business. So even as I went to General Mills, I went there with the opportunity to really get smarter on marketing. Mm-hmm. You know, I came from a liberal arts college. I went to Colorado College. And so I really wanted to become smarter in marketing. And for sure, General Mills got me started that way. But my plan had always been go back to business school and then try to make that move into the med tech space.
Excellent. And you mentioned you got the job at Medtronic, which is a great place to start. I wasn't aware of, were they not hiring MBAs before that, or was that a specific program that they had set out?
Yeah, it was the second year that they brought MBAs in. So we're taking ourselves back a number of years now. But yeah, it was their opportunity to start bringing in kind of up and coming marketing talent.
Okay.
And so there was a group of us that were brought in. I think there were 10 of us. And now it is part of Medtronic's process. They hire people every year out of business school.
What was that like? It sounds as if then you were sort of the marketing business people coming into a company filled more with engineers and product development types. Am I envisioning that correctly?
You've got it. That's exactly correct. Yep. And so it was, I would say it would take time. It took time to really transition to that, but really a fun environment. I joined Medtronic when it wasn't even $1 billion company. And so a lot of growth, a lot of learning. And like as I mentioned, I ended up being there for 24 years. So that's amazing. Lot of change over that time as well, but with opportunity.
That's great. What were a few of the high points while you were there? So the projects or businesses that you're working on that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, well, I started in pacing, actually bradycardia pacing, and launched some pacemakers, and then went from there into perfusion, which was a really challenging business, but a really exciting business. And at the time I was in perfusion, not even a year in the perfusion business, the company acquired a technology called the Octopus from Utrecht University. It's a tissue stabilizer for beating heart surgery and really started the beating heart market. So a super exciting opportunity. I was pulled in to lead marketing for that. And we took it from really no patients getting beating heart surgery to, hundreds of thousands of people getting beating heart surgery today. So really an exciting opportunity to really build something from the ground up. And then we also then created, coming out of that acquisition, we ended up creating a business that was called Cardiac Surgery Technologies, which was all the new space in cardiac surgery, minimally invasive cardiac surgery. And they literally put a wall up in the company, in the building, so that we would act like a startup. They wanted us to not worry about all the requirements of the organization and to go fast.
Interesting.
In fact, our mission was to go fast. Like a cheetah. We all had cheetahs on our desk and go fast. The fast will eat the slow is what they said. So those are some of my high points. I also spent some time in philanthropy. I actually went into corporate and led a big non-communicable disease initiative focused on bringing together people, products, and philanthropy, and spent time all over the developing world in Africa and India and Latin America and China. So really exciting opportunities while I was at Medtronic.
I saw that part of your resume. I wondered how that transition happened. Was that an area you wanted to pursue and just sort of move away from marketing medical devices, or?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I was asked to do an analysis. This is now at least 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I was asked to do an analysis of, will the future of structural heart disease be interventional approaches? So this is at the very beginning, before everyone got into transcatheter valves. So I did some primary, secondary research, actually for the CEO at the time, Bill Hawkins. And I did that analysis, and the decision was made. My recommendation was, yep, the future is going to be interventional approaches to structural heart disease. And they reorganized the company. So they put the vascular division together with the cardiac surgery division to create cardiovascular. So then I led strategy for that new organization. Super fun, really exciting. It led to the acquisition of CoreValve, which of course is the transcatheter valve,
That's right,
aortic valve for Medtronic.
Wow.
And while I was in that role, the foundation was looking for strategy help to go after a concept that Harvard has really publicized called shared value. So how do you leverage all the assets of your company to have a greater social impact in the world? So back to people, products, and philanthropy. And that led to that role. And while I was in that role is when I got a call from one of my prior people I'd worked for at Medtronic, who had left Medtronic and had gone to Covidien.
Oh.
And yeah, exactly. So you can kind of see where this is going. So I loved my job in what was called corporate philanthropy, but I really missed the business. And so I got a call from this gentleman, Chuck Brynelson, called me and said, can I finally get you to leave Medtronic? And I said, I think I'm ready to do something new. Left, went to Covidien, led marketing for their interventional lung solutions business. And within 2 weeks on that job, it was announced that Medtronic was acquiring Covidien. Yes. So I've been at Medtronic for 20 years, left, and then was acquired back.
Every time you think you're out, they pull you back in. That's fantastic.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the move to Philips. How did that come together, and what was appealing about that opportunity?
Yeah. So while I was back at Medtronic, I got a call from one of my prior, again, someone else I'd worked for in the past, a guy named Chris Berries. He called me and asked if I would come help him. He had just joined Philips, and Philips had just recently acquired Volcano. And they were trying to think through their next move in the devices and therapy space. So he called me and asked if I would be willing to come in and really lead strategy to think through, how do we take Philips from this just amazing innovation imaging company deeper into devices and therapy. Mm-hmm. So I came on board with Philips. Super exciting opportunity to really think kind of ground up. How do you expand this company to go beyond imaging into more of the device and therapy space? So I joined in 2017, came in as a strategy leader, led strategy and marketing for image-guided therapy devices. During that time, the acquisition was made of Spectranetics. And after being in that job about 6 months, I then moved into leading the peripheral vascular business. So yeah, exciting time.
That is great. So how different are the cultures between an imaging company and a therapeutic implant device company? Is there a big difference?
Yes and no. So no, in the sense that Philips, just like Medtronic, completely focused on innovation, right? And continuing to innovate the procedure for the purpose of patient care and advancing patient care. So from that perspective, really, really not that different. I would say structurally, the company is a little bit different in the sense that Philips is very corporate driven. And so has really great corporate vision that permeates through all the businesses and very kind of corporate led, while Medtronic is very business unit led. I would say Jeff Martha's even taken it further on that path. So that is a little bit different than in terms of culture, but both companies completely focused on advancing patient care and innovating to improve globally how patients are cared for, both in developed countries and developing countries.
And what does the development of image-guided therapy, what does that look like? Is it just a pairing of an imaging system with an implant that is delivered with the use of that imaging system? Is it that simple? Talk a bit about the pairing and the strategy and what Philips hopes to be in this regard.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both, I would say, right? Part of it is really creating smart devices that are well connected to the imaging. Some of it is expanding both the imaging portfolio and the device portfolio to, again, expand care. So lots of work around artificial intelligence, augmented reality. How can you think about providing more tools for a physician to be able to better control and give more precise treatment to their patients? One of the things that's, I think, unique about Philips is that we're the only company that has imaging and therapy. So that combination is really powerful. And then as we innovate, really pulling those pieces closer and closer together. For instance, one thing we're really focused on is radiation exposure and how do we minimize radiation exposures. IVIS, which is the technology that was acquired in the Volcano acquisition, is really focused on how do you see inside a vessel and minimize the need for radiation for the angiogram and angiography. And we're continuing to innovate, thinking about EVIS, so extravascular ultrasound, being able to see inside the body and see inside vessels and minimize the radiation exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So really continuing to think about how do we expand imaging to guide more of that treatment. We often say decide, guide, treat, and confirm. We want to help physicians do all four. And the imaging plays a really critical role in that.
That's terrific. So how does that, in terms of selling both the imaging systems and the devices, how does that work? I'm assuming that the salesperson with something in their bag does not have an imaging system in their bag. Are there two separate businesses and they're sort of selling separately and just happen to maybe communicate? Or is it a uniform single approach?
So I would say a combination. So within, again, we've got an image-guided therapy business, which has two pieces to it, image-guided therapy devices and image-guided therapy systems.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people out, the system side is think interventional cath labs, right? So we've got systems people selling all that. We've got devices people selling all of the devices that you'd think about, medical devices, but they also sell intravascular ultrasound, which is capital equipment and is often integrated into that system. So there's a lot of collaboration in the field by both groups. They have individual responsibilities, but they also work really closely together as we sell these systems so that the capital that's within the devices business, and the capital is the IVIS capital, intravascular ultrasound capital, as well as our laser capital for our atherectomy technologies, making sure that we integrate that or sell it together for a full capital sale. We also have a group of people who are procedural solutions salespeople, and we have a procedural solutions business that'll go into an OBL and completely outfit the OBL with all the capital, all the devices, everything they need, including even consulting services to help them get set up to open up an office-based lab. So a lot of integration of imaging and therapy within the sales force, either collaborating or literally a sales force, the procedural solutions sales force sells both sets, both products.
So are you selling into, are OBLs, and actually I hadn't heard that term before, that's office-based labs, OBL?
Yep.
Is there a rising number of those that you're able to sell into? Are you sort of feeding a trend there, or are you selling to sort of the existing hospitals and physician groups and just having them switch from another system to your system?
Yeah, no, there's absolutely a trend to office-based labs and ambulatory surgical centers.
Sure. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. So think difference between an ASC and an OBL. ASCs have a little bit higher credentialing requirements, but both similar procedures. For example, you can't do a PCI in an OBL, but you can in an ASC. Mm-hmm. But these OBLs, sometimes they're connected to a hospital, sometimes they're standalone, but provide incredibly good quality of care at most often a much lower cost than if it were in the hospital. So it's absolutely a trend in the United States and growing in other parts of the world as well. So we have a whole team just focused on that area.
This would be if you're going to a Mass General Hospital, in Boston facility, but it's in an office park somewhere, or it's in a sort of a commercial building.
Yep. Yeah, but they're fully outfitted, cath labs. They have. And so that procedure solutions team is selling ultrasound, CT scanners, MRI, not necessarily MRI, but CT scans, ultrasound, certainly all of the kind of an interventional cath lab. They're fully outfitted. They're actually impressive places.
Interesting.
But it's a big growth area because it is a lower cost of service area.
Well, let's talk a bit about your growth. You mentioned the acquisition of Volcano and Spectranetics a little bit, closed on Intact a couple of years ago. Let's talk about sort of those three and what business that kind of built. And then I want to get into your most recent acquisition of Vesper. So how are you building through acquisition?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the way Philips really got into the devices space was with that acquisition of Volcano in 2015. And with that provided intravascular ultrasound, as well as physiology and a mechanical atherectomy technology. When I came in, that's what was in the portfolio. We then acquired Spectranetics, which moved the organization even further into the devices space. So that added 3 or more treatment space. So 3 coronary products, 5 peripheral vascular products, and 4 heart rhythm management products. So Spectranetics grew the business by about 40% in terms of the significance of that acquisition. Yeah, really, really exciting acquisition. In the meantime, obviously, as we acquired Volcano and acquired Spectranetics, there was lots of organic work happening at the same time, which, of course, we then picked up and continued to expand on. Most recently, as you mentioned, we acquired Intact Vascular in September of 2020, a really interesting technology, very much focused on an unmet need in the market. Part of treating arterial disease is the use of balloon angioplasty to open the vessel. And part of that process of opening the vessel often creates dissections in the vessel, so kind of vessel flaps. And if those are not treated, they can lead to thrombus, restenosis, future procedures. So what IVUS does is help identify those dissections. So you can see them on an angiogram and using angiography, but IVUS really gets you inside the vessel to see those dissections. So when you see a dissection, then you can tack that dissection with the tack endovascular system. So when you think of a tack, think of a really small stent. It's a scaffold, but it doesn't have the same radial force of a typical stent. So it's not as invasive on the vessel. It just tacks up that little dissection and helps make sure that you get continued flow. We've had fantastic data that's been presented called TOBA, is the whole series of data out there on both above the knee and below the knee use of the tack system. So really exciting technology added to our portfolio, a beautiful combination of IVUS and then identifying where these dissections happen and then what to do about them. And then the most recent acquisition was the acquisition of Vesper Medical, which we closed on in January, so just 6-8 weeks ago. And that's another really exciting opportunity for us. This is then on the venous side. So Intact Vascular was on the arterial side. Vesper Medical is on the venous side. And here's an area of disease that we've been really deeply involved in from an IVUS perspective. Mm-hmm. So again, intravascular ultrasound is used to really see inside the vessel. And it is used to both identify thrombus and to determine what to do from a management of thrombus perspective. But the other part of venous disease is compression. So when you think about somebody with venous disease, it's either based on thrombus that's become old or even scarred over, which is impacting flow, or it's happening due to compression, where the artery or your bony structure may really flatten your veins and cause problems. So a venous stent is a way to manage both of those issues in terms of opening up the vessel. And IVUS has been used for years to see what you should do and how to best place a stent. So we've been kind of keeping our eyes and ears open for a venous stent. We're super excited about Vesper Medical. It's a combination of 2 stents, 2 stent designs. One is the Duo Hybrid, the other is the Duo Extend. And this unique combination is like strong where it needs to be strong and flexible where it needs to be flexible. So as you think about, most of these stents are happening kind of in the pelvic area, and we've got bony structures. And so it needs to kind of be strong at the top and more flexible at the bottom. And this technology really integrates that very unique management of the stent. And then the Duo Extend really is just an extension to that stent and perfectly connects. Right now, oftentimes, physicians are using 2 different stents to manage those 2 different areas or to make it a long enough stent. And here we'll have this nice combination that fits together.
Very cool. So you had reminded me prior to my pushing record that Intact and Vesper, well, actually Vesper had spun out of Intact, correct? They were the same. Well, at one point they were the same company.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember. Did you have an investment in one or the other? And I guess where I'm going with that question is, how does Philips look at acquisitions going forward? Do you sort of have what you need right now, or are you looking to continue to build a portfolio through acquisitions?
Yeah, I would say that we are first focused organically, right? We spend almost $2 billion a year on organic activities and R&D work. So we're very much an innovation-driven company. And I would say we think about acquisitions more as tuck-ins, filling needs that we feel like it's either going to take us too long to get there on our own from our organic portfolio, or there's a unique skill set that we don't necessarily have, that by acquiring this enters us into a new space that provides opportunities even further into our portfolio. with this, the other beauty, what I often tell people when they're interested in Philips, even from a recruiting perspective, is the beauty of Philips is that it has, especially devices business, has come from all the other big companies and startups. Mm-hmm. So we have just a phenomenal group of people who are coming from all the blue chip medical device companies, as well as through our acquisitions, we bring in new talent. And it's an exciting organization where there's lots of great ideas flowing, bring kind of the best and the brightest together. So we continue, we'll obviously be always watching from an inorganic perspective, but thinking about that in relation to either unmet needs that we're not currently working on organically or to bring in new skills and capabilities.
It's interesting to me that you started at Medtronic at a time when that was really growing into a more diversified med tech company with the MBAs and the engineers kind of coming together. Now you're joining Philips and you're almost building a business within a business from scratch. What is that process like? And you did hit upon it, but how has that resonated with others in the industry? Is there an excitement about having sort of a new player in the market that folks can join and be part of?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are excited about it. I think everybody is becoming more and more aware. It's just as the innovation continues around artificial intelligence and augmented reality, the excitement around combining imaging and therapy. So we definitely have people coming interested in being part of our team. It's an exciting time. It's really an inflection point where we can, I think you asked the question earlier, how do you think about how imaging could potentially drive the therapy, right? I mean, really not just inform it, but really help drive it. And there's some just incredibly exciting work being done in that space as we think about where we can go, all with the goal, which I think all of us have who are in the med tech space, expanding access to care and really improving care for patients around the world.
Terrific. And just final question. If you were to look forward 5 years or so, how does that Philips look compared to the Philips we're looking at now? Do you anticipate any dramatic right or left turns, or are you going to kind of stick to your knitting and just continue to build sort of on this parallel track with the image guided therapy?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. One of the things that Philips has been on is really a transformation of the organization, right? Over the last 10 years, they've sold off everything that's not health related, right? So lighting and domestic appliances, and really focus now on health technology. And that will continue to expand. So, one of the things that's unique about Philips is really highly focused and committed to the whole healthcare continuum, from healthy living all the way through to diagnosis and treatment, and then ultimately chronic disease management, hopefully keeping people on this cycle of healthy living. And we'll continue to expand that, right? Continue to do more and more that's virtually managing patients. I know Chris had talked a little over a year ago about the Reacts platform, where we can help reps support physicians remotely. Thinking about more that we can do where we're using digital assets to manage patient care. One of the things as we look at our image-guided therapy business, we're in 7 disease states, but only 3 in devices. So the others right now, it's just an imaging portfolio. So we'll continue to expand that, right? Really look at how do we put those 2 together to meet the needs of patients in the lung space, in neurology, in spine, right? And some of these other really interesting, oncology is another example, really interesting spaces where we believe we can add value by bringing our knowledge and expertise around imaging with expertise in devices.
Fantastic. All right. Well, it's a great story, and I really appreciate you sharing it on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tom, for the time.
All right, and we're back. Let's wrap this up, Chris Newmarker. Before we do that, though, and get into social, I did want to give Chris Landon credit for his other first on the podcast interview we did with him 2 years ago. You were the first to join us in our fight against pumpkin sausage, Chris. So
yes,
you took a stance.
The war continues. I don't know if we've won yet. I don't even know if we've made progress, but we will continue.
We will continue to fight. We will fight. So, all right, Chris Newmarker.
I will complain if I go to the co-op this fall and I still see him there. It's got to stop. The madness has to stop.
Where are you on social media out there, Chris?
You can find me on social media on LinkedIn. I'm Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. You can find me on Twitter at Newmarker.
Right. And I am on Twitter at MedTechTom. I am on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi, Salemi. Chris Landon, you are too smart to be on Twitter. So,
but I am on LinkedIn, so feel free to follow me there if you like.
Fantastic. All right. So please do, what do we want people do again, Chris? I always forget.
Wait, does Landon remember?
Oh man, the one question you knew I didn't know the answer.
Found something. Oh my gosh. You knew the pumpkin sausage. You're like, oh, there's just you gotta like, follow,
I thought you guys would love the fact that I remember the hot tub chicken wings. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
I even forgot about the hot tub chicken
wings. My gosh.
You are a true fan. So yes, like, follow, subscribe. Well done, Chris Newmarker. And please do subscribe to this podcast. You'll get this podcast. You'll get our Intuitive Talks podcast. You'll get our Stryker Talks podcast. And you can also subscribe separately to our Medtronic Talks podcast. And please do share this on social media.
Wealth, a smorgasbord of like knowledge and insights.
As hopefully we all get back into planes and airports, now you have all these podcasts to listen to and to make yourself a better medtech person. And
right.
Of course, please do register to attend our upcoming in-person meetings because the world is opening back up. Use the code DTW25 to save 25% off the price of registration. All right. Well, we've got 2 minutes to spare, Chris Landon. We're going to get you to the airport on time. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, guys.
Definitely fun. All right. And folks, tune in next week.
Awesome.
We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks weekly podcast waiting for you.
Take care. Stay healthy.